Now I've moved into the next phase, which is putting the roof on, and the roof ought to go pretty quick. I mean, I've got everything lined out like it needs to be. One of the first things I'm going to do though on this roof is I'm going to put a piece of drip edge around the edge of it. And I bought this 2-inch drip edge from the local hardware store. Now some people like to put it on there, some people don't. I like putting it on there because one thing it does is it dresses up the edge. If I've got a bad cut on the top of this fascia, I can dress it up with this drip edge where you won't be able to see it. So it's just another trim piece the way I look at it. But one of the things I like to do is not go from corner to corner. I like to kind of wrap it around there. So when you lay your first piece of drip edge in, I left, I don't know, 6 inches overhanging back towards the east here, and I cut a 45-degree angle out of it because then I can bend that around the corner. And the reason why I do is it gives a good clean edge on the outside, and then when I lay this next piece in on the east side, it covers it up. And so when I'm laying all this trim and everything else in, I'm trying to think about where I want things to overlap because I don't like seeing gaps when you look at it. So since the common approach on this building is going to be from the northeast, I like to have all the trim kind of running towards the back, so the gap is at the back of the building. And the same way with the fascia board, if I'm going to have any gaps or mistakes, I started on the back of the building, and that way I refine my technique before I move further up towards the front. You know, again, if I want to have any mistakes on this building, I want them to be minimized towards the back where I can hide them pretty good, but they won't be as noticeable. So I'm going to get this drip edge put in, put a few screws in it, then I'm going to start laying the tin on top of this roof, and the tin ought to go pretty quick. It's 3 feet per sheet, so once I get it laid in here, it'll take, I don't know, maybe half an hour to put the roof on this thing. And so once we get the roof on, we'll be ready to go to the next phase. So you can see here when I lay this drip edge in, this is where I just wrapped it around. So what I'll do is I'll lay this new piece of drip edge right over the top of it and get it adjusted into place before I screw it down. The reason why I like doing it that way, because if you're the front of the building looking back, you won't be able to see that overlap where one piece of this drip edge overlaps the other. So it's just a little technique I use that kind of dresses it up a little bit. So I'm gonna get this thing screwed down, keep working my way all around the edge of this building. So now comes both the best part and the worst part, and that's putting on the roof. Now it's the best part because with these 3-foot wide sheets, this part's gonna go quick. And it's the worst part is because I'm not a fan of cutting metal. Now, cutting metal, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can use tin snips or you can use those electric nibblers. I prefer to use my circular saw with a metal cutting blade on it. And it goes a lot quicker, but it's loud and there's a lot of sparks, and you got to wear hearing protection, eye protection. I wear gloves. I roll my sleeves down so that way the sparks don't hit my arms. If you had to cut a lot of metal, it gets pretty uncomfortable, but just this amount, it's not that much at all. So to cut my metal, I've stacked it up. I've got all the ends even, so it's perfectly even. Now I've got it all clamped together. I've got a straight edge across it, and now all I've got to do is get my saw fired up and go across the straight edge, and it shouldn't take but about a minute to cut all this. But once I get it cut, I'm ready to put it on there. Now you may ask, why did you need to cut it? Why didn't you just buy 10-foot metal? Well, the problem is when you live in a small town, you get what you get. I wanted to use this R-style panel instead of a corrugated panel, and all they had was 12-foot, and I didn't want that much overhang, so I'm gonna cut them about 10 foot 1 inches long. I went ahead and pre-marked where my screws are gonna be on the purlins up top, so that way when I get the piece up there, I don't have to measure each time. I can just put a screw in the flat part of each panel. And so the roof, once you get it cut, it ought to go up pretty quick. So I'm looking forward to getting this part done. But when I cut it, one of the things I did was to make sure I oriented my metal the way my building lays, so that way the factory edge is going to be on the north side. Again, I'm trying to put everything, like if I got the cut off just a little bit and it doesn't match up right, at least that'll be on the back. I can always go back and trim that on a little bit later, but if you really pay close attention, you can probably see where I'll trim. But to avoid that, again, I put my factory edge to the north, where you're going to see when you approach the building, all the stuff that's a little bit less than perfect goes to the back. So I'm going to grab this first piece of metal, throw it up on top, get it lined up, and then work from there. So now we're down to one of the most crucial parts of putting the roof on, and that's just getting this first sheet of metal lined up, because we got to get this first one lined up right, so that way the other piece that interlock with this one run, and they run true all the way to the end. Now we can make slight adjustments along the way, and you probably won't be able to notice those adjustments if you have to point them out, but we're going to try to get this right from the start. So I've got this measured where it's going to sit about 1 inch off the front edge of this building and 1 inch off the back. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put one screw in here to hold it in place, go mark it and measure it and establish that point down there, put another one in, and that'll lock this whole first sheet in place. Then I can start putting it in across the front and then in the purlins as well. Now, one of the things I'm not going to do is I'm not going to overlap my next piece with this one. I'm going to tuck the next piece underneath this one, and the reason why, again, we'll see it mostly from the house over here, and so when you're looking this way, I don't want to be able to see that edge lift up. It's going to cover each edge from this point forward, and so it'll make a cleaner look when you're looking at it from the place you'll approach it from the most. The same way with this edge, I'm going to make sure this edge is established good, the east edge is established good, so that way when you're looking at it from the house, you're going to get the best look you can. We're getting the last few screws put in the roof, and then this roof is complete and this whole project is dried in. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go to adding the trim around it and building the door.